Now go ahead and rejoice in your new found freedom and let your tears flow. Let your tears replenish the earth as you soar through the sky. Let the current lift your wings and take you higher and higher. For you have been waiting for this day. Free at last, free at last. That's what the black butterfly says to me. Yes, we can. Yes, we can, black butterflies. Believe in all possibilities.
The community affectionately calls them Mr. Tommy and Miss Khadid. And what I found out is that they had a store here, they had real estate here, had a barber shop here, and so it was just really interesting to hear the history. And really, the store was Urban Tilth before there was an Urban Tilth. They made sure that no one went hungry. And the program, it says that she's an author, so we want her, she wants to share a little bit. Wow. You gotta get you. Okay. Put the videos on pause. He really, all the people that we're honoring today, I knew when I was growing up here. They had a part in my life because they were the pillars of this community.
To relationship with Princess because she joined our watersheds team. And it was the first time the watersheds team was running, and we hired her to help us recruit people from the community to be in the training program. And she was, born and raised in North Richmond, knew a lot of people, and was excited to kind of grow in her career path. And wow, it's been a long road since that first time. I remember there was so much growing that has happened between the princess we met at that moment and the princess who is doing amazing transformative work today.
Really caught off guard by this. I'm like, oh my God, not me. At least not Chad. But I started working for Urban Tilth 8 years ago. And the knowledge that I now hold and can now spread with my people. First, the knowledge to grow anything is very powerful and key. So these hands definitely got dirty. I was in the creek from picking up trash to planting one of the first trees at the farm. So yeah, I definitely get in the mud with my people to make things, so that we can build a better life for ourselves. We don't need no outside sources. We don't need to go out looking for help. We can help ourselves through cooperative building and organizing together.
We shall overcome someday.
Yes.
Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday.
All right.
I have a dream that people will stop taking advantage of me. I have a dream that people will see me for who I am and not who they want me to be. I have a dream that the color of my skin will stop influencing first impressions of how people perceive me. With me having all these dreams, I'm living in a constant nightmare. Living in a life where you earn the respect but don't get it is baffling. Everyone is blind, but it would be more clear if people just opened up their eyes. The amnesia that people have developed blows my mind, but let it refresh your memory. The pain that was placed upon my ancestors are embedded in my bones, craving for the recognition that I've always deserved, begging for the manipulation and abuse to stop, hoping and praying that one day people can stop worrying about the color of my skin and start worrying about
90s when I worked here in North Richmond at Shields Reed Community Center. And then Annie King Meredith and I, we got reacquainted through a project called the Learning Network, which was a statewide consortium of family resource centers all throughout California. My role in the Learning Network was to document all these activities that were going on all around the state of California. And after the Learning Network concluded, Annie asked me to return to North Richmond. And I was like, come back to North Richmond to do what? And Annie said, well, we want you to teach our young people how to do what you do. And that was produce media. Is currently on the board with CHDC. I believe she's still on the MAC, Municipal Advisory. Annie just keeps going and going and going. And one of the things that I want to close with is, over the years, I adopted Annie as my aunt. I call her Aunt Annie. And, you know, I always be grateful for Annie for waking me up. And what I mean by waking me up, 3 years ago, I was in a battle for my life. And I was in the hospital for 7 months. And I was in an induced coma for 3 whole months. And I didn't wake up until Annie came to visit me at Alta Base Hospital. And Annie, you woke me up, and I'll always be grateful to you for that. Amen. So without further ado, I'd like to have Annie come up so I can award her with her wonderful certificate. For your 50 years of service to our community. We honor you for the many trips.
Let it shine, 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 let it shine. Shine, shine, shine. I'm gonna let it shine. I tell you, shine, shine, shine. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Shine on all of them. I'm gonna let it shine, shine on all of them. I'm gonna let it shine. My only said to me, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
It's so great to listen to the stories of these amazing individuals, those who are still with us. I know we're going to honor some who are not with us today. And there's great biographies of each in the program, but the stories, so read those if you haven't, but the stories just really bring this to life. I do want to start by saying there's somebody not on this list to honor today that I do want to call out, and that's Doria Robinson, because Doria, I know Doria, you know, doesn't want to go up front, but I just want to acknowledge you, your leadership, your team at Urban Tilth. I think we should really thank Urban Tilth for, you know, holding this event. And what makes Urban Tilth great is its work, it believes, is grounded on all the other work that happens in this community, in Richmond and North Richmond. Urban Tilth respects the leadership that's existed here, it respects history, it respects the past, and that's why I think it's able to build so successfully. So I just wanted to say that, and to take the time to honor all of these individuals. And that's really what it's about. And that's what the farm is. Yes. And we do have, a certificate also for you on the rain garden. The Fred Jackson Way Rain Gardens. And so I have the honor of saying a few words about two individuals. First, Fred Jackson. I do see some of Fred's family here. And you'll see his brother looks just like him. And, you know, I'm gonna let you in on a secret. When we renamed the major street here in North Richmond after Fred Jackson. We very intentionally called it Fred Jackson Way, not Fred Jackson Street, and not Fred Jackson Avenue, because we said we want to make this about holding up his way, his philosophy, and what he did. There was nobody stronger to develop unity in the community and peace than Fred. And I know the next person I'm honoring comes from County Public Works, and they would appreciate this, because when County Public Works first printed up the signs, they abbreviated way and said W-Y. And we said, you've got to take those signs down and replace them with W-A-Y, because that's what we're getting across here, is his way. And you know, the city and county don't always work together as quickly as they should, but I can tell you this, they worked really fast. The county and the city worked really fast when we came together on naming the street, because as you know, it goes through 2 jurisdictions. It was Filbert Street and 3rd Street. 2 different names, right? The main street in North Richmond had 2 different names. And so in life and in his memory, Fred continues to bring all of us, including the city and county, together by having one name for that street, Fred Jackson Way. And I first had a chance to meet Fred, been working with him for about 25 years, and what was always apparent is that he was also always drawn to young people, to youth. And I still remember, there's a great TV story about one of our North Richmond community cleanups, and I remember Fred was interviewed in it, and he's talking about the community coming together and having a safe place, a clean place, and healthy place for young people. And the story ends with Fred walking, and there's like 4 or 5 kids skipping down the street, following Fred. He was like the Pied Piper. It was this great, I still remember this visual. I want to translate that visual to your mind of all these young children. They were like under 12 who were following Fred. And I also remember seeing the sort of the look at Fred's eye. For many years he served as the Santa Claus for an annual event at Bree Elementary School, now Bree K-8, where every child received a book. At that time it was a toy, now it's a coat instead of a toy, or this mural that's done. And I remember all the kids would come up and would give him the book or the toy, and he would always make sure they would say thank you before he gave them the book or the toy. I remember they'd come up and he said thank you. He said you're welcome. And he gave it to them, and if they didn't, he would say, what do you say? And he had this way of relating to people. And here's a man, right, who served in the army, who really was a peacemaker. And one of the things and it's referenced in the biography that he also would talk about, is his experience of visiting a concentration camp in Germany when he was in the military, and where Anne Frank died. And and that experience had a profound effect, as well as his other I think, aspects of growing up to be a peacemaker. And a lot of us remember him from his work at Neighborhood House of North Richmond, right, which was just an anchor institution here in North Richmond since the 1960s. And Fred was head of community resources, always about linking people to resources, linking people to opportunity, but really was involved with young people. And I think if you were to ask to describe Fred, it would be, he was a singer, he was a gospel singer, an amazing gospel singer. He was a writer, an author, he has several books. He was a playwright. How many of you remember Brother Dapp? One of his musicals. He believed in telling the stories through song, through writing, and through his actions and through his work. While he served on committees and commissions all over, I just think the stories about how he worked with people here in North Richmond, you always went to Fred for advice about how to deal with conflict. Because Fred knew how to resolve conflict. To Fred it was like, You know, we're all here with the value of improving our community, and sometimes we have different ways of wanting to get there, but we need to come together. And he had this way of being able to get people to work together. I think that's what really made him special. If you haven't had a chance to look at one of his books, or one of the things we should do, maybe during Urban Tilth, is have one of his plays performed, and bring that back to life. He was on the county's Economic Opportunity Council, so that was always what he stood for: is economic opportunity, peace, love, unity, we are so fortunate to have had him here. Our memory is still, we see it every day when we look up and we need to explain what Fred Jackson's way was. And it was about peace and unity and working together. So I don't know if his family's coming up to accept. I think there's also, do you also have a plaque? I know I have these. So I have some certificate from the county. So why don't you come up?
Beautiful. Naming the street after my brother, I mean, that is just an honor. I had the opportunity to grow up with Fred. He and I was close. Fred had the passion of writing, and he passed it on to me. Now I'm an author, and I just authored my second book. I'm just going to splash it. I don't mean to try to steal anybody's thunder or anything like that, but it's called Soldiers of Betrayal and American Tragedy. It's about my life.
A former county employee who unfortunately passed away shortly after he retired after 32 years of working in public works at the county, Mike Carlson, and I do see his family here, and his wife. And it's not often when a county engineer working on a project falls in love with the community and wants to keep coming back. And I think that was how Mike felt about North Richmond. And Mike worked for 32 years in Contra Costa County, working in flood control and public works. But he was always about linking creeks to the community, and about respect for the natural watershed, respect for the land. And so I know when he was on site at Urban Tilth, he felt especially appreciative of what Urban Tilth was doing and the connection in the community to bring people to improve the land and be stewards of the land and protect water quality. And because that's what Mike did for a living at the county. And it's great when you get to see the results of your work in the community. And I remember being with him on one weekend when he came out on his own to join in one of the events. And he was saying, I just love this, he said. I just really enjoy, seeing people out here, seeing how people care about the creek and care about this land and growing food. And so he was taken by that. And I know when he unfortunately passed away too young, his family asked for any contributions in his honor to be made to Urban Tilth, because he cared about Urban Tilth. And it was one of these things where the work that he did helped lay the technical groundwork. And I know Della Ho, who's a former public works director for San Pablo, is the project manager for the farm and understands how important it is having that sort of engineering sort of foundation and planning done to move a project. But I think Mike always had a great sense of humor and was a people person. You don't think of engineers as being people, right? But he was. And so I think it's great that you've chosen Mike to be honored for his connection, that connection between creeks and community, and doing the work to help make, and working along with your team to help make things happen. So I know Kim, his wife, is here, and family members want to come up, and appreciate you being here.
Sort of an engineer that wasn't an engineer because he had a sense of humor, some don't, and he also liked people, because most engineers, they like numbers and roads and bridges and they don't connect. But he loved connecting with the community, going out in the community. And in January, we had a walking bridge named after him out in East Contra Costa County for his work out there. And so to come out here, and he always talked about going to North Richmond and how he loved coming here. Always talked about John and loved John. So to see him here today, giving him this recognition is really helpful. Yeah, and Urban Tilth.
Yeah.
And when he passed, we asked what could we do, and people donated to Urban Tilth on behalf of Mike, and we raised, I think, over $6,000 for Urban Tilth. So his legacy lives on in Contra Costa, that's for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
And humbled to have this opportunity to provide a tribute to my predecessor on the East Bay Regional Park Board. And of course, you know who that is, Director Whitney Dotson, who is and was and always will be a true community hero. Whitney was a tenacious environmentalist, a champion for social justice, and a visionary community health advocate. Whitney had a strong vision for how to improve the East Bay by preserving open space and increasing access for everyone.
I grew up in the church across the street. I grew up in the church over there because I lived amongst all the churches on this street over here on Gertrude. The whole block was family. House to house to house was family. So we had a good time going on. So I'm here to talk about Dr. Clark. And I was under the impression that I was here to talk about Dr. Clark and Whitney Dotson. I worked very closely with both of them. But getting to Dr. Clark, I grew up with Dr. Clark. Dr. Clark's family was a very prominent family in the community. His father was a barber. He cut hair, and he was very strict, Mr. Clark was, and very proud man, very proud, and he raised his children with strict discipline, and it was all good growing up in North Richmond. I see a lot of familiar faces that grew up with us. Me and Annie come up together, and we've been doing community organizing for a minute. So getting back to Dr. Clark, you see his bio is in the program, so there's not very much to say, but I just like to reflect on his organizing career. Dr. Clark, I remember he came to work at Neighborhood House, I would say around 1977. Dr. Clark came to work at Neighborhood House, and that was the onset of his organizing career. And I would like to mention that we came up through a revolution. We was revolutionists, okay? At the drop of a dime, we was ready to protest, we was ready to do whatever we had to do. And we also came up through the hippie revolution. So, you know, we were flower children, we had the flower power, and we had the Black Panther Party, we had the black, symbol. So we had a lot going on for us coming up. But it was good times, very good times, especially the hippie generation. With Berkeley being right there, San Francisco, we was indulging in it all. A lot of protests going on at UC Berkeley. And what I would like to say about Henry was a strong fighter. I mean, he would fight politically. Henry would call up anybody and everybody, governor, assemblyman, okay, senators. If he had an issue, he would call them up. And if he couldn't make a call or couldn't find them, he would call on other people to get in touch with them. So when Henry became sick, he continued to fight, okay? And he used me and Annie as his secretary. And so, like we said, he was on the MAC board for as long as Annie has been on the MAC board, which I've given about a good 30 years, because I've been secretary for like 20 years, and they was there before me. But when he became ill, as soon as the MAC meeting was over, before I could get home, you can expect a call from Henry. And he's like, Cynthia, who was that? What did they say? Can you contact him in the morning? Yes, Henry, but I come through for him. But I would like to recognize some of Henry's work, because I said, there's no need doing a bio, and I had no idea it would be in the program, but I just wanted to tell a story or two about Henry. And in North Richmond, Chevron had a lot of toxic emission into the community on a daily basis. And one of our main eyesores was the Arthur Fertilizer Plant, which is located about 3 blocks over. This big old 3-story building. They produce fertilizer and all type of gardening stuff for your garden to get rid of pests or whatever, to make your flowers grow. And every day, around the same time, I say around 3 o'clock, we would get this rotten egg smell in the community. Every single day, the community smelled like rotten eggs. Henry protested. Henry got that building demolished, okay, out the community completely. That's one of his accomplishments, okay? And another thing Henry accomplished was when General Kim had their last major spill in the community, Henry fought against General Kim, and when he came down to the bargaining table, Henry had demands, and his demand was for General Kim to put a health center in the community. So, as a result of Henry's work, we have the Center for Health in the community, which has been there since early 2000. So it's going on like 25 years, something like that. And a lot of people utilize the center, and it's great for the community to have a health center in your community, because most of the things in North Richmond, we have to go outside of the community to get services. The community we grew up in wasn't like that. The community we grew up in was a functioning community. We had all type of business in the community. We had service stations. We had a lumber mill, fish markets. Those things don't exist in the community anymore. And Jan, she's shaking her head because her father was a major store owner and a barber. And another thing about Henry, and like I said, I don't have much to say, but another thing about Henry, he would do a protest in a minute. I don't care where, when. He would do if it was a one-man protest, no problem. He would make a bunch of noise enough to rile up everybody, okay? But I was working over in the city for Communities for Better Environment over on Howard Street, and Market Street was just around the corner. So I was going to lunch one day, and me and my little jolly merry self, probably doing something I have no business doing, okay? Sneaking off somewhere. But when I got on Market Street in front of the Chevron headquarters, looked like all hell had broke loose, okay? And traffic is stopped, and we got people running up and down the street, bullhorns blowing, people's protesting. It was Henry. Henry got a big protest going on Market Street. He like it busted wide open. And they got traffic held up. We got policemen. Henry got people out there in all kind of costumes and disguises and stuff. I said, hey, Henry, what's going on? He was like, protesting, okay? But it was so alarming and shocking to me because it was just my normal day going to lunch, okay? And I see one of my homies out here protesting on Market Street and got it lit, okay? So that's what Henry was like back in the, like I said, the 2000s and the late 90s. Henry would protest Chevron just about every day, and they had the headquarters down in San Ramon. And Henry would be on TV every single day doing a protest. And so, we know Henry that formed the West County Toxic Coalition. But in the end, I became very close with Henry and his wife, Ray, because I would ride, we stayed out in East County, and I would ride back to North Richmond with them to the MAC meeting. And he was ill, but he wouldn't give up. To the very end, Henry insisted on attending MAC meetings. He insisted on keep being involved and getting this done and getting that done. That was type, but he fought until the end, until he couldn't fight no more. Okay, Henry, and then we went on Zoom during COVID. He never missed a meeting, maybe once or so, but he knew he was ill. He knew his time was here, but he never gave up. He continued his fight. He continued his fight. So now, I say I was supposed to say something about Whitney, right? So I'm gonna conclude with Henry, but just something about Whitney. We talk about the Bruno Mars, right? And I just want everybody to know how that came about. Whitney, worked with Whitney, neighborhood house, okay? And one day he gathered us all together, all the workers and the children from study hall. We're going out on a picnic and we're gonna go try and save Bruno Mars. Okay, so I'm like, boy, we can embark on something that's far with not what's inside, okay? And so some of the people walked out there, a lot of environmental groups came with us. They walked out to the marsh and some of us rode. Fred Jackson was with us, Dr. Clark, Whitney, and we walked out until the Richmond Parkway to the San Pablo Marsh. And we viewed that area, talked about it. Then we walked on over to the Ring Creek, which was the Bruno Marsh. And we're gonna save the marsh. And this is our first time going out, starting this campaign off, okay? And when we left Bruno Marsh, we walked over to Point Pinot and did a barbecue. So that was the first North Richmond Shoreline barbecue, and it continued for 10 years. So I'm like, when they, East Bay Regional Park, when they decide to step in and help us acquire the land for Bruno Mars, I'm like, okay, it's all now. We're gonna make this, we're gonna do this, okay? And when they did the dedication for starting work on the Bruno Mars, I'm sitting with Whitney. I said, Whitney, we're kind of up in age now. I don't think we're gonna see this project get completed. But we did see the project get completed, which is a good thing. And I just want to say one more thing about Whitney. Whitney was a homeboy. Whitney loved Louisiana. His goal and his dreams was to move back to Louisiana. He always kept a family house in Louisiana. And that was his goal, but he was like a naturalist. All the food he ate was natural food, no canned foods. And even upon his death, at his funeral, Whitney had a plain wooden box for a casket. That's just how natural he was, okay? And I think I'll conclude right here in getting back to Brother Clark. I don't know who's going to receive the award. I talked to his wife, Ray, and she's not feeling well. After Henry died, Ray closed the house down and sold the house and moved into an apartment. And she said she was just totally exhausted. But I had to, and then Dr. Clark also was the founder of the North Richmond Music Festival. And we've been doing the music festival. It'll be our 11th year this year. We do it every July. And it's nice. All our senior citizens look forward to the festival. Right, Paulette? They look forward to it. It's a big thing.
All of you for coming out. Hey, Miss Paula. Hey, Miss Cynthia. Thank you all. Everybody for coming out and honoring the guests today. So we started at the farm and we're going to wrap up the day. So we got two more things I wanted to mention to you. So our goal, one of our goals this year is to make sure that every North Richmond resident knows about the North Richmond Farm. So I am a North Richmond resident. I am a CSA member, and so I get my produce from the North Richmond Farm. And so we just want to make sure that the community knows about it, because what made me go up there was I saw on Twitter, "Save the North Richmond Farm." I was like, wait a minute, I haven't even got to go around to see if they deliver produce. And so that was my, like a lit fire for me to go around there and see what was happening before I was hired. But, so we want everyone to know about the farm. And then also, Urban Tilth was actively engaged in a 2-year community, just community engagement to get your feedback